So recently there's been a groundbreaking discovery in TFT about frontline targeting and how you can manipulate it to your advantage. I mean, just watch this clip. Kayle here completely ignores the entire frontline even though they're closer, and she targets the Cogmore in the back. That is insane. This tech is extremely powerful, especially with range carries with a lot of burst and escape like Tristana, or carries with a lot of burst and Omnivamp so they can heal up from the damage. The best example of the latter is triple blue Kayle or Bale with Sage active. This tech has enabled many wild variations of comps you already know, such as frontline Tristana, frontline Kayle, and frontline Kindred. This tech has the potential to transform every comp in the current set, but it definitely revolutionizes how you can position, which in turn will affect the meta. And support items make this tech extremely disgusting due to the tankiness of items like Aegis, Randuin's, and Locket. But any source of resistances are great, like through Altruist or Augments. But before I get ahead of myself, I should give credit where it's due. I did not make this discovery. The credit for this solely belongs to Alan TFT, who posted about this in my Discord. And with the help of myself, Alan, OB, Fury of Fungus, New Bathroom Who This, and Archangel, we managed to figure it out. And thank you to Camel for making it all possible. Glad you're finally back. Anyway, please show your support to Alan by subscribing to his channel. But with that covered, let's delve into what's going on. So initially when we were trying to break this down, we considered different theories about targeting. I was a proponent of the line theory, Fungus proposed the omnidirectional vision grid, and then we went full circle with the spiral theory. We were all lost, but the New Bathroom came in with a revelation. The way it works is this. When a ranged unit is in your front row, they ignore enemy units in the opponent front row if they're to the left of them and not directly in front of them. It's as simple as that. So here's a visual demonstration on how it works. But there are a few things that you should note. This does not work if the ranged unit is not in the front row. This does not work if there are any units directly in front of your ranged carry. This tech will only ignore units to the left of your carry, and it doesn't work when the front line is to their right. And this won't work if there aren't any other units behind the front line in range for your carry to target. In this case, it will just default back to the nearest unit targeting. For example, Sivir here is 4 range, but Cogmore is 5 hexes away, so she defaults back to targeting the nearest unit. Remember that your ranged carry will only ignore units in the enemy front hex, and then it will follow the usual TFT targeting of closest enemy. Theoretically, if your ranged carry has at least 7 range, then the furthest unit they can target is all the way in the opposite enemy corner. So this targeting is really odd and very specific for some reason. This is definitely a bug, but it could potentially be a hidden rule behind targeting in TFT, but perhaps this is specifically for melee units. And this is definitely unintentionally being applied to ranged units as well. But no need to worry, Alan has already submitted this interaction as a bug report in Mortdog's Discord. But now let's talk about how to use this tech before it's patched. So in my opinion, the units that benefit from this the most are Tristana and Kayle? Yeah, Kayle. Tristana and Kayle can have a ton of burst damage, and so can completely one-shot backlines with their first casts through this tech. However, while this tech is extremely useful early game, it will start falling off late game when there are more units on enemy boards, which could potentially block this tech. And for Kayle, this can be a big problem, as blue Kayle only truly starts one-shotting as 7 Spellweaver and with 3 upgrades. But that's where Zephyr comes in. This item allows you to remove those obstacles for the first 5 seconds of combat, which is plenty of time for your carry to burst their backline. So if you get Zephyr, then you can reliably utilize this tech regardless of stage. And with encounters, portals, and augments, getting Zephyr isn't difficult at all. Additionally, through the Ash encounter, since you know who your next opponent is, you can exploit their positioning with Zephyrs and this tech. But who's better, Tristana or Kayle? Well, that depends. Tristana comes online sooner, has high burst, escape, and damage reduction through 6 and 8 duelist. That damage reduction is why you want to play the standard Tristana Volibear reroll comp to utilize this tech, as it just gives Tristana a ton of damage and tankiness. Whereas Kayle needs to scale, and she doesn't have any escape. However, Kayle has much higher burst, especially with triple blue, and she can keep sustained through Sage. In my opinion, triple blue Kayle is just stronger than any other variation of Kayle in 14.7, but for this tech specifically, Bale is by far the best choice. And that's because Bale doesn't need the AP from Sage, and she benefits more from the Omnivamp. But for red Kayle, the Sage AP can make up for her lack of AP. Also, Altruist is great to give Kayle resistances, but so is Dragon Lord as it gives Kayle attack speed, which is especially nice if you're playing Bale. So this is the board you play around frontline Kayle. But note that a Story Weaver spat is ideally here to hit the spike sooner and drop an unwanted Story Weaver like Sivir or Zoe. I personally believe that Bale is superior because she gets a lot of raw stats through Altruist, Sage and Story Weaver, and even just that 12% Omnivamp can heal Bale for a lot because of how much insane burst she has. Anyway, there are other units like Kindred who have potential, however they turn out to be a tad inconsistent. As Fungus mentions here, Kindred in particular can dash forwards or backwards with her ult depending on how the opponent frontline moves. So Kindred is really inconsistent as opposed to Tristana, but generally you want range units that ult their primary target, and not units like Morgana or Soraka that ult randomly or target the largest clump. Even Azir has potential as you could one-shot the backline and summon a dummy there. I mean, here's a clip from Alan where Ethereal Blade Shen targets Wei in the backline and kills him very quickly. Honestly, any range carry has frontline potential through this tech, which is why I said that this tech can completely transform every comp in this set. But I want to emphasize again how impactful support items are with this tech. Of course, there's Zephyr, which allows you to banish enemy units to the Shadow Realm. But as I mentioned, items like Aegis, Randuin's and Locket make your squishy carry actually tanky and able to survive in the frontline for longer. Also, to hasten your carry's first cast, items like Zeke's and Chalice are great. But support items aren't absolutely necessary, like if you're playing around Bale. However, the difference between having these items and not is gargantuan. No, like seriously, like the difference is insane. These items are just so powerful in setups like this, and they're complete game changers. So of course, that means that Fine Vintage is giga boosted with this tech. Not to say this augment is broken otherwise, but Fine Vintage enables this tech so hard because you get so much insane value from being able to pick the ideal support items. I watched a frontline Kayle beat an Ornn 3 and it kind of wasn't even close, but that was mostly due to the sheer power of stacking numerous support items for Kayle. But with this augment, you can pull off any frontline carry you want. Fine Vintage is just so insane, I still can't believe this augment is silver. But before I wrap this video up, let me leave you with a few tips on how to play against this tech. There's primarily two things you can do to stop it if it's being used against you. Firstly, make sure you have a unit in either the top left hex or the adjacent hex. As long as your opponents don't have a Zephyr, they shouldn't be able to access your backline because there will always be at least one frontliner to the right of their carry. But what if they do have a Zephyr? Well, in that case, place a frontliner one hex back, but still in front of your backline. Even when your frontline gets Zephyred, this unit will tank aggro as it's closer and isn't in the front row, and so won't get ignored by the targeting bug. But generally, you should avoid only putting all of your frontliners in the front row as they can be bypassed. But with that, I think I've covered everything. Again, huge shout out to Alan for discovering this and letting me know. And again, thank you to Fungus, OB, New Bathroom and Archangel for helping figure it out. This tech originated from the Goody Discord, so make sure you join for when this inevitably happens again. But yeah, what do you guys think of this tech? I definitely think this tech will transform how you play the game, and the difference between not knowing and knowing will be huge, especially in ranked. Admittedly, I am extremely curious on how high elo players use this tech, so if you spot anyone using it, please let me know, I really want to see. But now I'll pass over some questions to you guys. Do you reckon this tech is a bug or is it intended? Will you use it in your games? And how awesome is Frontline Kayle? Let me know in the comments and remember to subscribe. Anyway, check out these other videos if you want to see more from me, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.